You wouldn't expect it by looking at them. The fairies, I mean. They're kinda cute, aren't they? Endearing. With their quirky little mannerisms and their plump dispositions. I just want to pinch those little cheeky weekies. They're only trying to give me a little bonk on the head, isn't that right? Like I'm sure many of you felt, my first reaction was, we must protect them at all costs. They're just out here to swing their little staffy waffies around. And then, Bayonetta Origins finally put me face to face with these devilishly charming critters. And you're forced to immediately tear them to shreds. Like, viciously and unapologetically. Okay, admittedly, my reaction to this was visceral. But as the game's story unraveled, everything began to fall into place, and the dark undertones of the fairies gradually revealed itself. We know the damage, we know the heartbreak. We're all too familiar with the unforgivable deeds of the abomination known as Singularity. But this reprehensible being didn't find success with multiversal destruction on his own. As with Bayonetta 1 and 2, Bayonetta 3 and Bayonetta Origins stories work hand in hand to give a nearly complete picture. As it turns out, the fairies happen to be the biggest threat to the multiverse in Bayonetta lore. We just didn't know it yet. How do we know this now? Well, let's set up all of our pieces before we connect them. First, we have the Umbran witches and Lumen sages who built the Jonungagap portals on Thule. This was apparently done to tame what they called the Singularity up in the sky. For those who don't know, a singularity is a region of space where the curvature of space-time becomes infinite. It's a point where gravity and matter are dense beyond calculation. Generally speaking, with the singularity, you cannot define a where or when. Our laws in physics break down at this point. We never see singularities themselves as they're always covered by the event horizon. And if we were to venture inside a black hole to find out, gravity would be so strong that even light is pulled to the very epicenter. In other words, this is one of life's greatest mysteries. We have no idea what lies beyond a singularity. What does it mean for matter to disappear? Where does it go? This is why singularities are usually presented as gateways to alternate universes in fiction. The Bayonetta series is no different in this regard. Okay, so the Umbran and Lumen actually succeeded in taming the singularity and travel into Jonungagap, the abyss that exists between universes, aka everything between the event horizon and the epicenter of a black hole's gravitational pull. Once they find the nexus and breach the barrier, bam! Alternate universe. I imagine many Umbran and Lumen got lost or stuck on these missions to study this phenomenon. Our next piece is Singularity himself. Viola claims this is what he calls himself, but he never actually claims this name to our faces. Matter of fact, he refers to himself as the affirmer of phenomena, which is a much bigger mouthful, but whatever. Singularity is a fitting name, as he's demonstrated to contain properties of a black hole, and can even turn himself into one at any given time to absorb entire realities. This is also how I explained the restoration of the universes at the end of Bayonetta 3. When the universes and Arc Eves got absorbed into him and then released, the where and when of his absorption became irrelevant, and the universes all seemed to go back to normal once Bayonetta freed them. Turns out Cereza had an in-depth knowledge of science, probably thanks to Jean, who's a teacher. You go, girl. Side note, this reversal of phenomena also allowed Bayonetta 1 and 2 to soul project from their revived universes to perform the Trinity Masquerade with Arc Cereza. But, okay, this all has nothing to do with the main point of this video. I keep having to explain to everyone that no one died in this game except Arc Cereza, and I promise, there's so much proof. Their bodies crystallizing and their souls never getting dragged to hell is a telltale sign of this. but no one sees my videos, so everyone keeps complaining about everyone dying. I'm trying, I really am. Anyways, the main point to gather here is that Singularity has somehow cracked the code on multiversal travel. Long story short, that code has to do with black holes, singularities, and a few other things we'll connect later in this video. For now, let's move on to the Faeries. Our final piece to this puzzle. The Faeries were mysterious entities revealed in Bayonetta 3 with little to no explanation. Matter of fact, we only got to see 2 of them in 3, and at the time, we didn't even know that they were fairy-human hybrids. Fast forward to Bayonetta Origins, or I guess rewind, as this game takes place over 500 years ago, and we see that the Faeries are a completely separate entity from the human race. Even more interesting is that if you view logs in Bayonetta 3 and Origins, you'll find that Faeries only exist in certain universes within the realm of chaos. Those universes seem to be very closely tied to the sacred timeline, aka the timelines for the Bayonetta adventures we've experienced with the trilogy. Faeries also seem to reincarnate instead of enter an afterlife in death, as we see with Lucan and Luca. This exclusivity to the realm of chaos and the fact that they only exist in certain universes hints that the Faeries have a deeper knowledge of the multiverse than anyone else. And as we're about to discover, this is very much true. Let's evaluate what the Faeries were up to in Origins. There's the obvious goal that the story focused on. Lucan was heir to the throne of the Faeries, and he was also the symbol of humans and fairies growing closer. But Puka, the Amethyst King of the Faeries, succeeded in overthrowing Arthur through the bigotry of an aggressive faction of fairies. Yikes, Puka sounds a lot like some people in real life right now. Anyways, with Arthur defeated, Lucan's soul is protected by his mother's magic, but Puka seals his soul away so no one can reunite his soul and body. Now, Puka's goal seems to be reversing everything Arthur stood for. But what was the next phase of his plan? His life ends abruptly when he leaves the forest to chase Cereza, so surely we won't know what was in store, correct? Not exactly. Platinum Games managed to sprinkle plenty of information for us in a particular section of the map, as well as recurring magic we see throughout the entirety of Origins run-through. Let's start with the first time we run through Puka's fortress. Cereza mentions how climbing all the gears reminds her of climbing up the clock tower with Jean. Curiously, the fairy technology controlling the gears also responds to Umbran magic. The entire fortress is working to harness some sort of foreign energy for some unexplained purpose. And that's all we knew during this part of the playthrough. Fast forward to the completion of this segment and you can return here for optional collectibles, one of which is a remembrance. In the remembrance, it's revealed that the Faeries created a rift in the sky, and Cereza admits she has no idea what they were up to. Ignis says something to the same extent in one of her journals. However, this rift looks very similar to another rift we've been seeing all game. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, you'd be correct. The rift looks like a giant Tirnanog entrance, and inside of it are some familiar looking clouds. We've seen them somewhere before too, and we'll see them more later when I explain this connection fully. For now, I'd like to explain one last aspect about the Faeries, their mysterious mist. In the biologist's journals, the writer mentions how the Faeries reside in a cloudy mist that distorts the shape and color of everything within. His exact words are, like a prism or kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is a familiar term too, right? Keep that in mind for later as well. So we have all our pieces in place. We have the Umbran and Lumen, creators of the Jonny portals on Thule. We have Singularity, the embodiment of a black hole looking to suck every reality into a singular point of infinite density. Finally, we have the Faeries, creatures who seem to have settled into the realm of chaos on their own accord and have made breakthroughs in tearing through and distorting the fabric of space-time. How are they all connected? Well, it all seems to come back to the Faeries. The Umbran and Lumen created the portals on Thule. with the giant one at the top of the mountain needing chaos gears to power it, allowing the user to skip to a world of their choosing. This was their way of taming the giant Singularity up in the sky. And the giant rift above Puka's fortress seems to draw parallels to this. The gear mechanisms for the Chaos Gears and the giant contraptions powering the portal on Thule look just like the gears from Puka's fortress in Bayonetta Origins. The blue light emanating from gears also mimics the blue magic Faeries and Tirnanogs emit, as well as Sigurd's blue energy, and the blue energy Luca emits whenever he activates his fairy magic. Tracing this energy back to the source leads us to the Faeries, as they're the ones we see who naturally emit this blue energy. That means the Umbran and Lumen, somewhere along the way, either collaborated with or exploited the Faeries for this unique magic. This is all an interesting connection for sure, but even more interesting is how Singularity seems to be connected to the Faeries. I already mentioned that Sigurd uses fairy magic to power his chair, but he also has a gear symbol on his chest that mimics the Chaos Gears, which we know uses fairy technology and magic. He has an odd ability to absorb strange forms of energy, like Souls of Archives, similarly to how the Faeries use negative emotions to power Tirnanogs. And when he absorbs the witch souls, their bodies turn to glass and shatter, similarly to Tirnanogs and Faeries. Beyond this, Singularity himself seems to have the ability to travel the multiverse, and based on the technology we see him using, it's clear he exploited the Faeries to do so. You see, the Tirnanogs were portals created by Faeries for interdimensional travel. However, as the rift in the sky at Puka's fortress shows, with more power, one can create a stronger portal that can travel entire timelines. It's fairly clear this is how the Faeries choose which worlds they inhabit in the realm of chaos. Their ability to create a mist distorting perception seems to also be tied to their dimensional travel power. Beyond the rift, we see clouds that look oddly familiar. That's because these are the clouds of erasure that Singularity uses to absorb matter from different universes into the universe of his own creation. The ability to distort reality with the mist also comes into play during the kaleidoscope segments in Bayonetta 3. See? I told you that word sounded familiar. In these segments, Singularity is distorting reality as if looking through a prism or kaleidoscope, just as the biologist described in his journal during Bayonetta Origins. We see the clouds of erasure during the secret chapter with Jean as well. Singularity has the ability to create a Tirnanog within this chapter, and his Tirnanog seems to be powered almost exclusively by the clouds of erasure, confirming the ties between the two powers from fairy magic. What's more, Singularity mentions that he used fairy power to trace Cereza's memories back to this point in Bayonetta Origins. This confirms with 100% certainty that he has indeed been exploiting fairy magic to accomplish his feats. It is the source of his power. Fairy magic is how Singularity can create clouds of erasure, travel the multiverse, distort reality like he did during the Kaleidoscope verses, even counter witch time. And most importantly, fairy magic is how he was able to adopt the properties of a black hole to absorb entire realities into one singular point. On their own, the Faeries could never accomplish the feats that Singularity did, but because their magic existed, the artificial intelligence was able to harness that power to devastating effects, nearly succeeding in wiping out the entire multiverse, only failing thanks to Jean accepting her fate so that Cereza could reverse his phenomena and restore the realm of chaos to its former multiversal glory. The Faeries may be cute little creatures, but they have a complex history with many secrets left to be discovered. Or perhaps it's best if they aren't discovered. If something like Singularity was able to get as far as he did with their magic alone, maybe we should keep them tucked away and protected within the boundaries of the multiverse. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to stick around the channel for more. I also want to give a special thanks to my patrons for making videos like this that required time and research possible. If you'd like more quality videos such as this one, please do consider becoming a patron via the link in front of you. Otherwise, have fun watching more of my videos, which are also linked here. Enjoy.